Hey everyone, my name is Megan Choy and I am a rising junior at the University of Wisconsin-Madison studying computer engineering and computer science. Today I am here with two future colleagues, perchance Nick and Ben. So Nick and Ben, why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Sure, I'll go first. My name is Ben Jaffe. I am the assistant director on the cloud platform team at Northwestern Mutual. My team specifically is in charge of infrastructure provisioning. So anything in Northwestern Mutual that needs to go on the cloud is going through one of our products to actually get to the cloud.
Yes, I'm Nick Harris. I'm the head of engineering at Inception Health, which is a subsidiary of Frederick Hospital. And so my job is basically to bring engineering to Frederick Health. And so I am building up the engineering team. We are working on AWS and trying to figure out how can we use the cloud to help out with all of the hospital's technology needs. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we're doing over here.
Very nice. So as you guys can tell, we're talking about cloud computing today. So Ben and Nick, can you both describe what is cloud computing and what is that role at Northwestern Mutual and at Frederick? Ben, you can go first.
Cool. Yeah, so what is cloud computing? I mean, very, very simply, it's just a computer that's somewhere else, right? It's not on your desk. It's not in your data center downstairs from your office. It's somewhere else in the world and it's running there, but it is an actual computer that's running it. So don't think it's just like, magically happening up there. So yeah, in my mind, whenever somebody asks about like, what is the goal of cloud computing? The goal of cloud computing is to remove cognitive load from developers that are trying to deploy applications to the cloud or to hardware, right? Like if you're a developer, you don't want to think about database scaling. You don't want to think about, are your queues working properly? Is your, Lambda functions, are they triggering all the time when they're supposed to, right? You just want to write business logic. So what the cloud does is it helps remove a lot of that cognitive load that didn't exist, 10, 15 years ago, when if you wanted a new application, you walked into the data center, you racked a server in, you connected it up, you plugged into the serial port to load an operating system on it, and eventually maybe you would tell the developer, okay, now you can throw your code on there and start writing whatever it is.
Yeah, Ben pretty much nailed it there. The only thing that I can really add on to that is that, that whole concept really has a big mental shift for a lot of developers and figuring out, okay, now that we're offloading this cognitive load onto someone else, what does that mean for me? How do I write my code to better fit into that environment? What do I have to give up from how I used to do things when I wrote software in order to best integrate into the cloud? And that's been like it's a tough transition for a lot of engineers who've been in the business for a while. But yeah, it's that reduction of cognitive load that Ben, talked about is just so critical for us to be able to move quickly in this industry.
Awesome. So Nick, you talk about like that transition that engineers need to take to get into like the industry of cloud computing. Were you guys able to illustrate those steps? Like what could I do as a college student or as a intern or just as someone who's curiously learning? What can I do to help get myself involved into this industry?
Yeah, I mean the first step, like with any new technology, because this industry changes so quickly, is just to get your hands on it. And that's what's really kind of tough with a lot of the cloud is, yeah, Amazon and everyone, they offer some kind of a free tier services where you can go in and play with it. But that's a very small subset of the services they offer that is free. Your ability to go in and learn this stuff for some of the more advanced things is cost preventative. And so that's kind of where, your formal education, getting in with a company to provide those resources for you is very critical for you to be able to learn this stuff. And then beyond that, it's just trying to understand like what is it that the cloud offers you that you are no longer responsible for. and then focusing in on understanding how that works and how you interface with it. Going into anything specific like Docker, like learning Docker is a critical one to get your code, containerized and deployed out into the cloud. That alone opens up so many doors with your ability to do kind of cloud computing.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like the first thing that I suggest to pretty much anyone that's trying to understand this industry is like Nick said, it's really helpful to get your hands on things, but sometimes it's cost prohibitive. Where there's a great site, probably you've used it before. It's called Linux Academy, which is my favorite training site. And for like $20, you can get a month on Linux Academy, and you can pretty much use whatever service you want, right? Just to test it out, get your hands on it, kind of do an AWS basics course to kind of get that foundation. And then after that, honestly, although some of those services are cost prohibitive, ones like, CloudFront, Lambda, S3, you could deploy a website for 50 cents a year, something like that, something crazy, and just take a small idea, get a website out there. Even if nobody's going to look at it, it's going to teach you how to do, that really important DevOps work of how to, get your code up to an S3 bucket and invalidate a, CloudFront distribution so that it creates a new one, and all those little things. And once you have that base, it's really easy to build on top of that into the more complicated services when you get into like your Redshifts of the world and stuff like that.
Awesome. That was great advice. Now I feel inspired to go and get my hands involved. I've never heard of Linux Academy, so I'll definitely have to check that one out. So let's just jump into the future and pretend that I have a little bit of experience. What opportunities and roles exist within cloud computing that are available to young adults or adults, anyone?
Oh God, like everything. I mean, really, like you can go anywhere if you start with cloud computing. Most of the people, there's been a shift in industry as of last 5-10 years that it used to be that if you were an infrastructure person, there was infrastructure people and developers, right? And infrastructure people racked and stacked servers, installed Linux, made sure that all the connections were wired up correctly, and then the developers, deployed the applications. Whereas now, most of the people on my team are developers, right? They come from the developer world. They were computer science majors, because a lot of the stuff that you do in the cloud, even on the infrastructure side, is just code, right? You can use Terraform, CloudFormation, CDK, like all of these tools to build cloud resources and kind of create those tools to get stuff up to the cloud. And once you're there and you get that base, you can be a developer on the business side, you can go deeper into the AWS side, but it's pretty much an invaluable skill set for any company that you're going to go to that has on the cloud, is having that basic understanding of what the cloud is, how do I get my resources there, and how do I manage them.
Yeah, and I think the only thing that I would really add on to this is, while it is a little bit of a shift for, developers to get into that mentality of writing code and shipping it to the cloud, everything else is basically the same. Like all of the same roles still exist. It's really just where you're shipping your code. And so you're always going to have people who are, go deep on infrastructure and really understanding what all that means to help you with support your code. You're always going to have testers. You're always going to have that kind of DevOps platform engineer role that's really helping the engineers do things better. These roles like front and back end, all of these roles still exist in cloud computing.
Great to hear. So another question I have for both of you guys, if so what is the projected workforce demand for this discipline?
Yeah, I'll start. It's really like the sky's the limit. It's great to be a developer right now. You get, hounded every day by recruiters. You have that luxury of picking your employer that you're interviewing with. It's really great, but it's also really tough for new engineers out there to get their foot into the door. And so that it's something that, it's in high demand, but it's not for everybody. And so that pool of resources is still going to be, it's really tough to meet that demand. Um, and but because of that, you really get those high salaries, those opportunities to work on something that's interesting to you. So just learning these skill sets just opens up so many doors to work in really any industry, healthcare, you know, the auto industry, like, really like anything that you really want needs this type of skill set.
Yeah, I mean, we always have open recs pretty much. I mean, I can't remember the last time that we didn't have, 2 to 3 open positions on the cloud platform team, because we're pretty much always looking for good people, and they're really hard to find. I mean, a good cloud engineer, a good DevOps engineer is, worth their weight in gold, essentially, because the job of the cloud and DevOps engineer is to accelerate everybody else, right? So you get that the better your DevOps engineering teams are, the better your cloud teams are, the better everyone is across the company. Because you can make, at NM, we have over 1,000 developers, here. And if we can take 20 minutes a day off every developer, like, oh God, that's a lot of time that we're saving just from a small, 8-10 person team. So it's really, really interesting work. The problems are new, a lot of them, that you try to solve every day. And yeah, if you have the chance to intern with a cloud computing team, or get your hands on it in any other way, I would definitely take it.
Sounds like the role of cloud computing is very important and that there's lots of opportunity. So that's awesome to hear. Amazing. So another question that I see, so it's like we're asking, what kind of recommendations do you have for trying to find a good fit for like strengths, interests, and values? And so I kind of want to twist that towards, how did you both know that cloud computing was for you? Like what made it interesting? How did it maybe fit your strengths and values? Nick, would you like to start?
Sure. I guess like for me, it's like cloud computing is like a means to an end, right? So it's like the way, it's the cheapest way to get your stuff out the door. And so it was kind of like one of those things that, like, for me personally in my career, I just kind of fell into, just because of like, well, we want to do this, and it's really painful to deploy it in, the old way. Well, let's just do it in the cloud. It's cheaper anyway. It's going to save us a bunch of money, right? And so it's kind of interesting for me, who's been in the industry a while, how you just fall into that. But then for new people to coming in, it's just like, how do I fit in this kind of new world? And so like for you, you're just gonna have to, experiment with it. Like we talked about with the different roles, like, do you really like infrastructure? Is that something that you really want to dive deep into? And, there's opportunities there. If you're just really interested in doing some, crazy computing or maybe just web development, again, like you can find those opportunities. And so you really just kind of have to, ask those tough questions and really dive in deep.
Yeah, much like Nick, I sort of fell into cloud computing. I started my career as a IT help desk person. I don't have a degree in computer science. I have a degree in history, which is super helpful now. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest thing is just don't say no to an opportunity. And when somebody asks you to take on a hard problem, much like what Nick said, I got into cloud computing just because everything else was really hard. And it ended up being kind of the easiest way to accelerate the business, is to start putting stuff on the cloud, because we could scale up and down really quickly. Not Northwestern Mutual, but a previous company was an ad tech company, which could have billions and billions of impressions a day. And there was just really no way to keep up that scale without starting to move toward cloud computing.
Wow, great to hear those stories. So we have about 5 minutes left, and I wanted to ask one last question for both of you. So with like your journey and everything you learned in tech, what is one of the biggest takeaways and like a lesson that you'd like to leave everyone with?
That's tough.
It is.
um, honestly, like going back to my last answer, just don't say no to opportunities just because you don't understand how something works or you don't feel like you can do it. This is a new industry for everyone, right? Like it's not like people have been doing this for 40 years and you're gonna have people tell you you're doing it wrong or you're doing it incorrectly. Like everyone is kind of new and learning as we go. And if you take on a hard problem in cloud computing and solve it in your company, the chances are it's going to get noticed. Like it's going to make a huge impact in the company. So, anytime you're in a meeting and someone asks how to solve a problem, raise your hand and say you're going to look into it. And a lot of the times it'll end well for you.
Yeah, I guess mine is kind of in the same vein. I guess it's more aligned with like the imposter syndrome in general. Like the cloud is new, right? But there's always something new. Like every 5 years, there's something something revolutionary and new that's going to come out. That it's the new hot thing everyone's going to swarm on or whatever. And like and it's just now those new things are going to be on the cloud, right? But there's always something new, and you're always going to be going into it unsure, and that feeling of like, oh, maybe I should actually know this. And that's like my biggest, like, I guess, lessons learned in my career is to embrace the imposter syndrome, ask questions, admit that you don't know this, like this is new, of course I don't know this, or it's new to me, and of course, so it's I don't know how to do this, and asking those questions. And if you don't do that, you're only holding yourself back. Like you're preventing yourself from learning. And so embracing your ignorance and just asking questions and own it.
Yeah, I would say it's important, like, that when you're looking for a company and you're interviewing people and you're being interviewed, to get a feel for kind of what the culture is in terms of asking questions, right? How do people react when you try to poke and prod and ask, what you might think is a silly question? Are people, taking the time to explain things to you, or is they're rolling their eyes and they're like, oh, this person should know this already? That type of culture is really, really important and really healthy to have.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. Because in my young career, it's been so helpful for me to ask dumb, like silly questions. I thought they're silly, but then, it helps me learn so fast, and also to continuously be curious, and also to push yourself to be uncomfortable is something I heard from you guys. Like embracing the imposter syndrome and like making yourself uncomfortable and doing a difficult project. I think those are all really great bits of advice. So thank you both, Nick and Ben, for sharing with us. And have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
Megan.